Good evening. Good evening. May the peace of God be with you. I'm so excited to be with you this evening. If you were outside today, it snuck up on me this summer day, and I'm so grateful to see it. The sun shining, uh, leading us to this new season, and I'm so glad to be with you tonight to continue our study, our series, "The Power of Reinvention." Tonight, I'm making a pivot, leaving the story of Abram and Sarai, who eventually become Abraham and Sarah. I want to look at the life, probably for the rest of the summer, of Joseph. And I think he, along with his great grandfather, no, his grandfather and his grandmother, it would be his grandmother, Sarah and Abram. This whole, when I look at it more, and I'll get stuck in it if I do the whole Genesis. I did that around my first 2 years. I did a long study in Genesis. But this whole family uh, is being reinvented. They're leaving their old selves, their old places, their old familiar ways of being and thinking and existing and following God on a brand new journey. And I think that's what God is calling us all to. As God called Abram and Sarai in Genesis 12, we see that same call, that same promise that Joseph is a beneficiary of. But just because you want to reinvent yourself, you find out like Joseph, no reinvention is obstacle free, problem free. You and I will face our fair share of dilemmas, but what we have to be mindful of the the journey is worth going through some dilemmas and struggles for. In Joseph's narrative in Genesis that we're going to examine in 37 is a great example of that. Before we get into that, I want you to like our page if you haven't already. You're watching on YouTube, Facebook, subscribe so you will get all the notifications about what we're doing at First Baptist. And if it's your first time in our study tonight, we thank you for being with us. We're glad that you are here. You're always welcome here. We pray a blessing you will receive, and you will if you just believe. Lord, thank you tonight that we can be reinvented by your spirit that guides us into all truth. Thank you that transformation and metamorphosis in our lives, even in the small, mundane things, are still possible. Thank you for being with us on this journey all the way. Now, speak to us and guide us and inspire us, impact us, expand us, and take us to another level. Take us into deeper depths and higher heights. In your name, we pray. Amen. I was watching over the weekend one of my favorite series, uh, Barbershop. Barbershop, three series, centered on the barbershop starring Calvin. It was played by Ice Cube, and Eddie, played by Cedric the Entertainer, D. Ray Davis, Eve, Michael Ealy, and a host of others. The first one is my favorite of the series, and I was watching, and I happened to interview Ice Cube this week too about the big three, but I was watching uh, the first installment of the trilogy and the second installment actually I was watching, and he had some competition across the street from Nappy Cuts. It's a hilarious name for a barbershop. They were this innovative new branch of barbershops that came to threaten and really gentrify and move him out. And Nappy Cuts had basketball courts in the barbershop, had fish in the floor, and you could take the fish out the floor, get it fried, flambéed, sauteed. My man said they had the latest in barbershop technology. The clippers were highly engineered. They even had leather. Uh, I don't even know what you call them, Jones. We wear in the barbershop. Leather covers that you wear to catch the hair when you get it cut. And Calvin was facing this threat of this high-tech new barbershop coming to a Chicago neighborhood. And he called D. Ray Davis, who, like every barbershop has, someone who knew how to get stuff for a discount. And he said something that I've heard time and time again, but this week it caught me in a different way. He says he wants to get some items, but it's not about nappy cuts. It's about growth and expansion, not about nappy cuts. I think what he was trying to say was that what nappy cuts did was force me to look at myself and the way how my business ran. And I can't do things like how I've always done them. But nappy cuts is not my competition. My competition is me. And if I focus on growing and expanding, if I keep growing and expanding, it doesn't matter what nappy cuts does. I think that's true not just in a movie script, but that's true in our lives. Anytime we zero in on growth and expansion, we find out that the only competition we have is the person we were and how to get better, and the person we want to be and how we keep improving. It's not about what they're doing across the street. It's not about what she's doing, what they're doing, what them are doing. It's about our own growth and expansion. Because it's a tragedy to already be. It's a tragedy to already be where you're going, Manuel Scott says. If he was alive, I'd shake his hand because God knows I use that all the time. It's about growth and expansion. And the power of reinvention is about how do we grow and expand in all phases of life. How do we grow theologically, meaning how do we see God at a deeper level, just not a Sunday school basic ABC level, but how do we think critically and have a deeper spirituality? How do we grow and expand in our business life, in our financial life, in our family? How do we grow and have bigger goals and bigger visions? Growth and expansion. It's not about what anybody else is doing. Calvin was saying, I can't control what's going on across the street, but what I can control is how I, I can't control what I do and the narrative I believe. And you and I can't control what nobody else does, but we can control what we do and the narrative and the story we believe. Today, I was at a Caris school, Village Elementary. They had a hawk walk. They were walking and they were collecting donations for a charity called Homefront. And it works with folks who are unhoused and struggling in different areas. First of all, I had all black on. I just thought I was going to support her. I didn't know I had to walk too. I was unprepared. And our house was cool. So when I went outside, I didn't know how hot it was. But I was listening to one of the teachers or the principals give a speech to the kids to inspire them and thank them for their hard work. And one of them said, "You are already change makers." I love that. I said, that's going to be one of my many mantras. I am a change maker. I'm already a change maker right now. See, it's never about what's going on in the future. It's about accepting who we want to be as already done. Not I will be a change maker. I am a change maker. And I believe Joseph had this kind of perspective, this kind of vision, this kind of modus operandi, this way of thinking that we'll examine in the text this evening. It's in Genesis 37. Genesis 37. Pull it up. And it's a story that is a continuation, as I said earlier, from Abram and Sarai. So Genesis 37, looking at the New Revised Standard Version. In fact, I might need to get to 36. Let me look. 36, 31. Wait a minute, wait a minute. Bear with me, bear with me. Before we get to 37, I just want to read the lineage of Jacob, or his name will be changed to Israel, who is Joseph's father, the son. Matter of fact, I was right. Abram and Sarai are the great great grandparents of Joseph. Is Abram, Sarai, Isaiah, Rebecca, Isaac and Rebecca, Jacob, and Rachel and Leah, and then Joseph. It's a multi-generational story about reinvention. Genesis 35, verse 22 says, 23 says, now the sons of Jacob were 12. The sons of Leah, Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun. The sons of Rachel, Joseph, and Benjamin. The sons of Bilhah, Rachel's maid, Dan and Naphtali. The sons of Zilpah, Leah's maid, Gad and Asher. These were the sons of Jacob who were born in the Padan Aram. Notice he has a multi blended family with four women, he has wives and maids. He was a busy man, and it's a whole complicated story. We'll be in that thing all day, but I just want to let you know the kind of family dynamic that Joseph comes from. And I will say this, that Joseph had his eyes on Rachel and his uncle Laban, who wanted to, uh, who offered, as they did in that time, his daughter Rachel to Jacob from what was be like their marriage of that day. But he tricked him and gave him his other daughter Leah. So yeah, kids by Leah, kids by Rachel, and Rachel was the one he always wanted. Rachel was the favorite. That's the one he loved, and he worked an additional 7 years in Laban's estate for the rights, the permission to be married to Rachel. That's the context. Now we go to 37. Jacob settled in the land where his father lived as an alien, the land of Canaan. These are the descendants of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was shepherding the flock with his brothers. He was a helper to the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah. Notice, four different women, one man, different brothers and sisters. It's a lot going on. This is a blended family, to say the least. His father's wives. Joseph brought a bad report of them to their father. Now, Israel loved Joseph more than any of his children because he was the son of his old age, and he made him an ornament robe. Mill was in a play called Joseph in Technicolor Robe, and it told this story. It's a famous play that's been on Broadway and other places. And notice he says, the text says that Joseph is Jacob's favorite. And I'm arguing not only is Joseph his favorite because he was he bore him in his old age. So he was saying, I still got it. But no, because who Joseph's mama was. And Joseph's mama, who could not have kids immediately, like Levi, Judah, and Reuben, and And Simeon, she finally gave birth to Joseph. And because he loved Leah the most, loved Rachel the most, he wound up loving Joseph the most. And notice, he's 17 years old. He's the youngest, one of the youngest brothers. He is the youngest brother. Benjamin will be born later. If we get to that story, it's going to take 2 years. That part of the story. See, when you read these narratives, you see how God uses everyday people, and sometimes the extraordinary happens. These are everyday, messy, drama-filled, backstabbing people, just like everybody else. And Joseph, 17 years old, notice what the favorite son does, who has the favorite mother out of everybody in Joseph's concubine. He goes and he's snitching. Snitches get stitches. He's giving a bad report. He's not doing himself any favors with his brothers by going on and telling his father a bad report. That's the context. And we always talking about the dream of Joseph, but we don't talk a lot about how Joseph did not make life easy on himself by causing trouble with his brothers. And sometimes we can antagonize people. Sometimes just let stuff go. Joseph is being a snitch, a tattletale, a rat, whatever you want to call him. He's giving his daddy a bad report on his brothers, acting like he ain't got to go face them, all eight of them or whatever, one of these days. Oh, that's another part of the context of the story of Joseph. Oh, back to, wait a minute. Here we go. Verse 4, when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. They could not speak peaceably because Joseph is not helping the situation neither. Flaunting his favoritism, wearing his robe. You got to understand, Jacob, why would he do that? Because he comes from a family of favoritism. His mama and his daddy battled and chose him over his brother as well. Forget his brother's name. It's around Genesis 30. Esau. Esau and Jacob were twins, and they said when he was born, he grabbed his brother's heel. And Jacob, his name means trickster. That's why God will change his name to Israel. But he comes from a family of favoritism, not giving everybody favor. There's a difference between having favor and favoritism. I believe everybody has favor, but favoritism lifts one up and downplays the other. And that's exactly what Jacob is doing with Joseph. And Joseph is not making life easy on himself by leaning into it. And maybe that's too much for a 17-year-old to bear and to ask. That's a level of maturity that's unfair to ask of him. Jacob, or Israel, who is the adult, is more at fault than the brothers and Jacob to me, and Joseph to me. Everybody, listen, if everybody should have got a coat, Joseph got one, everybody should have got one. That keeps peace. You don't treat everyone the same, but everyone should get equal treatment. And that's the challenge of having families and ministry and anytime there's group settings. The question is who's getting left out. Verse 5, once Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. If you're going to be a snitch, if you're going to tell on your brothers, if you're going to uh, wear your coat and from, and they working hard and you telling on them, these might not be the cats you want to share your dreams to. On a different level, from a different context, you and I have to be careful of who we allow to hear our vision. Because most people can't hear what you said because they haven't seen what you saw. Most people can't hear what you said because they haven't seen what you saw. James Mtume, who created Mtume, the song Juicy Fruit, and he wrote The Closer I Get to You by Roberta Flack and Donny Hathaway. He wrote so many hits for Stephanie Mills, such as him and his partner, Reggie Lucas. I never knew love like this before. And he got his start playing with percussion with Miles Davis back on the block, at least around 1973 or so. Fantastic. He's one of my favorite musicians, songwriters, and he's one of my favorite thinkers and philosophers about music. In fact, he was really James Heath. And his father, he comes from the Heath brothers, but changed his name to Entombed because he was one of uh, the original group that created Kwanzaa. And James Entombed said people who didn't understand Miles's transition from doing classical jazz to just exploring music, he said it's hard to get people, to expose people to fine wine when they're Kool-Aid drinkers. It's hard to get people to appreciate fine wine when they're Kool-Aid drinkers. And Joseph is trying to get his brothers to understand something that God is showing him. And that's amazing about God. God will show you and bless you even when you are not at your best, even when you're telling and making trouble with your brothers. God can still use us. And Joseph says, I got a dream. And he understands he doesn't have the credibility to share his dream in that context. You and I have to understand we have dreams, and when we want to reinvent ourselves, that's all Joseph is saying. He said, I'm 17 years old. I'm a kid, but I've got this dream. I am open to God's reinvention. His brothers are closed off to it, not to God, but to you. And sometimes when folks are closed off to us, we can't say it's their fault. A lot of the reinvention work is inside out. What can I take responsibility for? What part have I played in this moment that's being missed? They don't want to hear nothing he has to say, even if it's good, even if it will do eventually benefit them. He said to them, listen to this dream that I dreamed. There were binding sheaves in the field. Suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright. Then your sheaves gathered around and bowed down to my sheaf. Can't be sharing that. His brother said to them, are you indeed to reign over us? So they hated him even more because of his dream and his words. And he had another dream and told it to his brothers. Notice he's not learning. Joseph has a lot of mouth. That's why James writes in James chapter 1, verse 19, slow to speak, swift to hear. Listen more than we speak. He had another dream, verse 9, and told it to his brothers, saying, look, I've had another dream. The sun, the moon, and 11 stars are bowing down to me. But when he told it to his father, to his brothers, his father rebuked him. The favorite boy got rebuked and said to him, what kind of dream is this that you had? Shall we indeed come, I and your mother and your brothers, and bow to the ground before you? So his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept that in mind. As we begin this new phase in Genesis 37, which is a long and lengthy passage, I think I'm going to stop right there. I want us to see what we can learn and glean from Joseph as he's going through his own reinvention. And he's 17 because you're never too young to reinvent yourself. And his reinvention is going to take him down a long path, filled with trials and triumphs, ups and downs, highs and lows, difficulties and rewards, problems and prizes. Everyone slice it. But Joseph, what I get from this story when I read this narrative is that not only have to be careful of who we share our dreams with, but we have to be careful of the vessel that the dream is in. So Joseph did not have a good relationship with his brothers because his father favored him. So instead of working on a relationship, Joseph wanted to share the dream he had. And everybody can't handle your dream. Everybody can't handle your vision. It's not necessarily because of the dream and vision. Sometimes it's because of who we are, the dreamer. And God has to work on Joseph through the whole process of his dream. And God is working on us. Those of us who dare to dream and have vision beyond we can see and do. God is just not, God ain't working on the dream. I'm discovering day by day. God is inviting us to work on ourselves. And Joseph may be the favorite, may have the coat, may be the youngest bull, the young bull, but God is going to invite him to do some work on himself. And it's the kind of work that the coat can do for him, his mama, Rachel, can do, Jacob can do. Nobody can do it by himself. And here's the key takeaway. Will we be worthy enough to live into the dream? Will we be dedicated enough and committed enough to allow the process of reinvention to take place? I'm going to stop right there. We'll pick this up next week as we continue this narrative, and I have some bullet points and I have some key takeaways, but I wanted to use that portion of Isaiah 35, and you feel free to read it for your own contextual benefit, if you like, from 35 to 37. Then we'll pick it up on how his brothers will respond to his dream. Because Joseph is not only a threat because he's a favorite and he's young, he's a threat because the brothers feel as if they can't dream because Joseph has one. And I want to let you know, it doesn't matter who's dreaming, you can always dream too. God is not running short on dreams, on visions, and on reinvention. So as Joseph is going to reinvent himself in the passage, let's reinvent ourselves as well. We'll catch you next week, same time, same place.